Good morning. Thank you for America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. Apologize, I missed my intro. But we have a lot of information to cover today, and we're going to really hammer in today on what to expect. What could the IRS look like differently under a Trump administration? There is just so much. So I think I'm going to cover half of it today, half of it tomorrow. But we're going to really just dive into the what we have lined up for today. So there's a lot of news, a lot of things to cover, and so we're just going to dive right into it. So first of all, the first article I'm going to share is kind of scary. So Haiti, we know, has been in a lot of trouble. It's pretty much been taken over by gangs, and there's bodies, people just being killed. The government has been destroyed by local gangs fighting over control. And it's gotten so bad that U.S. Airlines, the FFA, came back and banned all flights to Haiti for at least 30 days after 3 airliners were struck by bullets coming in and out of their airport. So again, when you have complete lawlessness, no control, and you have gangs firing at airliners, and I believe a helicopter was also hit. Nobody was. I think one person actually was injured. And it was a UN helicopter trying to deliver humanitarian aid was hit flying over the city of Port-au-Prince. So pretty crazy what's going on for Haiti. I would pray for those that are there. It's really gone downhill when you just have random gangs shooting at aid helicopters and where people can't fly into the island. This next article is surprising. Honda, I guess this isn't the first time that they've had an investigation, but 1.4 million Honda vehicles under investigation following concerns of engine failure. Which vehicles does this mainly affect? 2016 through 2020 Honda Pilot and Acura M6. These ads, you gotta love them.
At Chewy, it's easy to fuel your dog like a champion.
2016
Choose
through 2020
ProPlan,
Honda Pilot and
the food
Acura
of National
MDX,
Dog Show winners
as well
13 years
as
running,
2018 through 2020
with the
Honda
advanced
Odyssey.
nutrition they deserve. For fast shipping, for life with pets,
And
there's
they threw in the
Chewy.
2017 through 2019 Honda Richland. Honda has an amazing reputation, almost as good as Toyota's for reliability. But again, this is something that they've had concerns with connecting rod bearings failing on the engine. And so if you do one of those, you might want to look into it. Honda is cooperating with the investigation. Similar recall took place last year when they recalled approximately 250,000 vehicles. Apparently there were 1,450 warranty claims, and the concern is large enough that they're inspected. So just be aware if you own a Honda from those periods, get it checked out and have them make any necessary repairs. This next one is actually a case from Europe. So in 2021, Shell was shellacked, sorry, I couldn't help that, by a lower court ruling in Europe, the European Union, ordering them to cut emissions by 45% by 2030. And they targeted them. This was just on Shell. It wasn't on any other industry, but this comes from the Paris Accords, and the court's trying to drastically enforce their rulings. So, of course, Shell appealed it, went up to appeal, and the Dutch appeals court ruled in Shell's favor, saying, look, you still have a responsibility, but that the lower court exceeded its mandate or its authority by mandating a specific number by a specific year. And again, this decision was the first of its kind by holding a private company accountable for global climate agenda. But again, that's too much. Shell has since relocated from London, from the Hague to London following that defeat. And again, it's not sure if that's whether or not it's a step in the right direction or not. I think it's important to be aware as to what's happening, because again, we had similar rules and mandates here in the United States from the Biden administration. A lot of that will probably change, and it's actually been pretty interesting that Toyota, of all companies, they don't make hybrids for the most part. They've been focused on, they're not making EVs. They've been focusing on hybrids. While Toyota and Honda have been focusing on hybrids, American manufacturers have lost billions of dollars on EVs. And now with the change in policy, cutting the Inflation Reduction Act with, trillions of dollars for, funding for electric vehicles and all kinds of climate change initiatives, it's going to really hurt American manufacturers that went all in for EVs, that they're already cutting back because they're just not being purchased outside of, certain Democrat enclaves. So this is a quick article here. No surprise, Republicans' attitudes on the economy. So consumer confidence or consumer sentiment went up nearly 30% among Republicans following Donald Trump's reelection. And among Democrats, it went down 13%. So here it dropped to 13%, to its lowest point since 2023. But overall, the stock market is up, cryptocurrency spike. But to see real economic recovery and improvements, we really need to see it in Main Street. People talk about the stock market. It goes up under Democrat and Republican presidents as well. Trump hasn't even done anything. So a lot of this is just anticipation. We don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs. We don't know what's going to happen with deportation and extending the tax cuts. That all is going to depend on Congress, which is still very, very tight. The House is in GOP hands, but it's fairly controlled, and you have a lot of infighting within the Republican Party as well in the House. And the Senate might not go along with it either. So there's a lot should be seen yet, a lot to be determined. So nothing's in the bag, and even if you think it's going to go your way. This next article, we're going to go overseas and talk about foreign policy for a little bit, just because it's so important. A huge blow to our alliance with Israel, to our reputation as an ally, and to our intelligence agency, that someone leaked Israel's attack plans to our enemies and pretty much delayed and stopped one of their counterattacks after getting bombarded and blasted by Iran. So they were going to launch retaliatory strikes against Iran. Never happened. Days and weeks passed. Nobody knew why. And now we know why. Someone leaked the plans for the strikes. We now know who. It came from the Pentagon last month. So again, from our government. And now we have a name. Asif Rahman, a CIA official. He was arrested in Cambodia and flown to Guam, where he faces Espionage Act charges. He has a top security clearance. And again, serious issues within our own, within the CIA. If you want to be conspiracy theorist, if you think that's where it stops, if you didn't think he had orders to release this, who knows? Who knows what really happened? But again, it raises all kinds of issues and really makes us look bad as an international partner. So he had connections to Pakistan, and it just keeps going. So, and again, huge egg on our face as a country. I'm glad they found someone. Did it go higher up? Is he a sacrificial lamb? Very possibly. We'll see what happens here. So again, it's we really need to tighten that up, and there's plenty of reasons. Trump is looking to clean house for many, many reasons. This is a huge reason to really clean house with the CIA. We can't have leaks like this. It really undermines peace in the Middle East. Now, the next two articles I plan to go through fairly quickly. So Israel was already talking about a gift for Trump, a foreign policy coup before he even gets into office. trying to advance a ceasefire deal in Lebanon. Whether or not this is just talk, who knows? Again, they're planning something with negotiating with Lebanon and Israel, but or Lebanon and Russia, and or Western and Russian cooperation, but they haven't even brought Hezbollah into the talks. The real questions are: is Iran willing to stop the multi-front war against Israel? Iran controls Hezbollah. They tell them what to do, but one of the big issues here, it calls for the Israeli military to be able to operate across the border in case of violations, and non-starter for Lebanese officials. The UN was put in charge decades ago. They completely failed at their job. Most of them were, like in Hamas, there were many UN employees that worked for the enemy, worked for Hamas, worked for Hezbollah. That's been proven. So again, it's interesting to see what happens. Apparently, Trump and Netanyahu are seeing eye to eye, but again, sorry, I wasn't sharing this tab, but Israel planning this foreign gift for Trump. If he can achieve peace in the Middle East, again, he started with the Abraham Accords in his first presidency. I really do think, and that's been undersold, if he can end the war that's been going on for over a year and establish what looks like lasting peace moving forward, I think that would be absolutely amazing, and I think it would mark President Trump as having amazing foreign policy credentials. Peace in the Middle East is something that both Democrats and Republicans, this is something we should all be in favor of, supporting, and not everybody's going to be happy, but I think we do need more peace. We need more overtures, and the next article is going to tie right into that, but I'm running out of time, so we're going to have to touch that right when we get back. So please stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. So again, we're wrapping up talking about how Israel wants peace. They want to wrap things up. But again, they want to do it on their terms, which is, of course, everybody wants to do it on their terms. One positive note here, coming out pretty much at the same time that Israel is saying, hey, we'll give Trump a foreign policy gift here. Iran yesterday postponed a third attack on Israel in hopes of dealing with Trump, because Israel attacked Hezbollah, took out their leadership. Iran attacked Israel, and then Israel responded, and it was kind of a weakened response from Israel due to the plans being exposed. But here, Iran is putting out that they want a ceasefire. So there have been calls for a ceasefire in Iran. Putin wants to end the Ukrainian-Russian war. And now Iran and the saying Hamas terrorists began to back down. I'm not sure about that. So, but Iran is now postponing its third attack in hopes of a deal with Trump. And I think that is very promising. If Iran is finally coming to the table, Iran is what controls Hezbollah, Hamas, and it really is up to Iran to end the war, establish peace, and maybe they do need someone that's willing to blow them the kingdom come. I don't know. We'll see. But it's halted announced true promise 3 attack on Israel until negotiations with Trump are made. So, and the Israeli government came out and said that Iran, which is deterred from attacking Israel, is a good thing. And it's just one of the issues here. Again, we have more concerns about Iran becoming a nuclear power. We'll see what happens. Trump has said he'll make a better deal with Iran than what Barack Obama did in 2015. Let's see. And the 2015 deal would have eventually given Iran access to be an atomic power, which is not a good thing. But again, it's news. It's coming out. I think it's good news, but let's take it with a grain of salt, and just kind of watch and see what happens. Could be very promising. It could be fool's gold. Who knows? So moving on from coming in things back to bringing it back domestically. CNBC has an interesting article here about one of the proposals, the many tax credit proposals by Trump. And now Kamala Harris made the same proposal to give a tax credit for caregivers. Now, the concern is the more tax credits, the more tax cuts you do, the more expensive it is. So again, you have this give and take, and if they don't cut, they don't reduce federal spending, it's going to be a huge mess. I'm highly encouraged by the articles from yesterday. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramsaway, I butcher his last name. Anyway, but doing the Doge, the Department of, to cut the waste, and they're talking about cutting at least $2 trillion from federal spending. That would pave the way for tax credits. It would pave the way to help people out, especially for caregivers. Again, we have an aging population. And again, they had a political moment this cycle, according to the AARP. Again, it puts a lot of weight on families, especially people that can't afford to put people in homes, nursing homes, long-term care homes. It is very, very expensive, and it weighs on families a lot. So it's estimates about 48 million Americans help take care of aging parents. About 78% of those have paid for care-related expenses out of their own pockets, adding up to around $7,200 a year. This could really help people out. We don't have details yet from the Trump administration on this. They did the Credit for Caring Act. Which was a bipartisan bill, proposed a credit for $5,000 per tax year to help caregivers, and anything over $2,000, it would be 30%. It would cover 30% of expenses over $2,000, and then they would have to at least earn $7,500 in income to qualify for this. So it's not, they're not going to get more money than you pay into it. But this credit can absolutely help reduce taxes and help people, give them a tax break for taking care of older parents. October AARP service found that 90% of Americans over age 50 support this. Of course they do. 80% of registered voters support caregiver tax credits. Sounds well and good, but if you can't pay for it, and this is just a drop in the bucket. The true drop in the bucket. The true cost of caring long-term for family members, it's much more than this credit, but any kind of help to these families would be helpful. So jumping back to some scary news, the Biden administration, and again, there's no way else to paint this, has spent like crazy as soon as the fiscal year expired. So again, the official numbers are a $1.9 trillion deficit. They kept it just below $2 trillion. And then as soon as the fiscal year ended, the U.S. budget deficit jumped nearly 4 times what it should have been for the month of October to $257 billion. So again, playing political games. When I talk about the Biden administration is printing over $1 trillion this year, increasing the money supply to make the economy look better. In their last year in office, this is exactly what happened. This is exactly what hurts people in the long term. And this is the damage that's continuing to happen. So again, this is absolute gamesmanship at the cost of taxpayers, at the cost of American citizens. With sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, where it looks like they're spending across the board as much as possible before they leave office. October marks the start of the new fiscal year with a big hole that President Trump will inherit in January. So again, this is the kind of games that infuriate me. Should infuriate the American public. It just it's like they don't care about the budget deficit at all. They don't care about the national debt. They just want to spend as quickly as possible before they're out of power. Can't in this case, if they do this every month, they could spend $1 trillion before they even get out of office. I mean, this is just, yeah. Color adjustments. So there's a few reasons for it. The U.S. Treasury is saying that they had a couple of interesting things pop up. Why would these numbers defer to just past the year? I don't think it's an accident. But they're saying it would have been about $47 billion for the October deficit instead of the 257 billion. But again, it just shows. I think it really does show a lack of fiscal sanity among Congress and among the White House. 1.83 trillion is the official number of the deficit, but if you add in the overspending that just happened, that puts it easily over $2 trillion that was overspent in this year, the actual calendar year of 2024. So this is the largest outside of the COVID-19 era. Again, which we couldn't afford then, and it's killing us now. So you had Social Security, Medicare, and military are the three biggest, in order. So Social Security is the largest, Medicare the next, military spending. One bright spot was $7 billion, or an 8% decline in public debt service costs for the first year-on-year decline. That's not on the total debt. So that's just one small area that declined a little bit. Moving on, again, we have some other articles I do want to get to. We'll see how much I get to it. Javier Milei went into Argentina. Very simple, Trump-like figure, but on steroids. This is the guy that had the chainsaw. He wanted to just take a chainsaw to the Argentinian government. They had inflation as high last year was 72.43% in 2022. He ran for office, was elected last year, and he promised to lower inflation to less than 3% by the end of 2024. So this is the craziness that a lot of foreign companies experience. They go through. Can you imagine an inflation rate of 72.43%? There's no point in saving at that point. It's just money does it. It's just ridiculous. You wonder why Argentina's economy has cratered so much, and why the Argentinian people turn to Javier Milei. So when you have extreme economic issues, they turn, in this case, to people that will promise to save it. Javier Milei, how is he doing this, and how did he promise? I mean, he is an economist. He doesn't look like an economist, but he is. And he cut the government. And he's cut spending, he's cut departments, and now the inflation is down to 2.7%. And so his one thing is, he wielded a chainsaw on the campaign trail as his plan to slash public spending, cut energy subsidies, and thousands of public sector jobs. And he's saying the country is now starting to grow, and now that inflation is tamed for now, let's see what happens moving forward, how their economy grows. Again, you have students protesting the cut in public spending at public universities. And again, he's slash spending across the board. And also, this is the key thing: have the central bank stop printing money to finance the debt. That's the number one reason. And again, thanks to the Biden administration, they printed over $1 trillion this year. an additional money. So we are going to see more inflation next year. There's no way to control it. The only way to control it is to stop the reckless fiscal policies that we've had and stop the overspending. And so he has some strong words. We're going to skip over that. But really, it is the state itself is a problem. Long live freedom. Getting rid of censorship, getting rid of the regulation. And again, that's what we need. We don't need a Hitler type far right figure advocating for state control and military spending. What we need is more free economic freedom, less government, and less government regulations. So some of that, I'm going to skip an article here. Betsy DeVos, who was Trump's education secretary or secretary of education, applauded his plan to completely eliminate the Department of Education. She ran it and she said it's a complete waste. Only 9% of spending comes from the federal government, but 90% of the regulation comes from Washington. And she says it's what's best for lobbyists, and all of this can be cut and just give the power to the states to make those decisions and save a lot of money. And it's just one department that they're looking to axe completely. Personally, I hope they axe a lot more. That's again, the overspending is an issue, but at the same time, there's clear examples of people saving us money. So we're going to switch gears here, go to the topic of the day. And, again, I've worked with the IRS for 15 years. I have the experience to see what's happened under different administrations. And again, today's been fairly political with what's happening in the world, what's happening with the new Trump administration. There's a lot of excitement, but at the same time, don't trust them as far as you can throw them. That's my motto and policy. That yes, they're promising a lot of stuff. A lot of it sounds good, but until it's actually implemented, until we actually see real cuts, real changes, we should still be vigilant and follow very closely what's happening with our government. Now, with the IRS, we've seen the IRS make massive changes under the Biden administration. What kind of changes, and how can this help you moving forward? So one of the questions I'm getting, and I talked about 3 different people yesterday about what kind of changes will the IRS make now that Trump is coming to office. We don't know. So they don't even have an IRS commissioner. I think he might have put someone forward as Secretary of the Treasury. But from there, they'll get an IRS commissioner and essentially have a new direction with the IRS. There's no doubt that that's coming. The question is, what kind of changes can they make? I'll speculate on that tomorrow. But today, I want to talk about some of the changes the Biden administration has made that I hope go out the window quickly. One of the first things is real allowable information from the IRS. So the IRS, using the CPI, using the PCI numbers to actually set inflation. We know these measures of inflation are ridiculously low. We know they don't reflect true inflation. Real inflation, how they exclude housing, they exclude gas. And then they set allowables for housing and utilities. And yes, looking at the PCI and CPI numbers and not real housing inflation out there. So that's one of the first things, that the IRS numbers and what they allow for are considered normal expenses across the country are woefully inadequate across the country, especially for housing utilities and for, I would argue, also for gas expenditures. If you prove up your gas expenditures, you can get more, but typically people are spending 100 to 200, sometimes 400 to 500 more than what the IRS allows. And so to make it a double whammy, not only does the IRS not allow for the real cost of going out and renting an apartment or purchasing a home, either one. Renting a home is pretty much, or an apartment is almost as expensive as purchasing a home today. They got rid of what was widely considered a 150% rule. Now, was this in their rules and regulations? No, but this is a practice that had been implemented and used for the IRS, as they knew that their numbers were not keeping pace with the real cost of housing and utilities. And so I think it was started back in the Obama administration. The Trump administration continued it. Biden administration got rid of it. Love to see that rule come back into place, so if people are spending over and it's reasonable, they can get credit for their actual expenses. And the reason it hurts people is because a lot of people are spending $1,000 or more over the allowable amounts. If you purchase a home here in Arizona, you're probably going to be paying $2,000 or more a month, and the allowable for one person is $1,600. You add in another $500 for housing and utilities, most people are upside down by $1,000 or so. So it really does hurt people, make it that much more difficult to qualify for programs that they would otherwise qualify for. And the worst part about it is the IRS treats you as if you still have that money to pay to them in an installment agreement, when often people just don't have the money. So they're being forced into payment plans that they can't afford. It's causing a lot of problems and hurting taxpayers, especially the poorest. That's the thing. A lot of these rule changes that they made are hurting the poorest the most, which is why it really gets me going. But we're hitting out of the break. We will come back and continue this after the break. Welcome back, everybody. And so we're just going through a list of things that I would love to see change that the Biden administration implemented with the IRS that hurts taxpayers, hurts the poorest the most. And by getting rid of these measures would really help people that truly need it qualify for relief, well-deserved relief. And again, it's stuff that was bipartisan, and again, the Biden administration really tightened up the rules, went after taxpayers in a way that's been unseen for 20 plus years. So again, they really did take a 20-year step backwards as far as providing good customer service and taking care of taxpayers. There have been some exceptions to that, mainly with irs.gov. You do have to go in, you have to do a face scan, date of birth, blah, blah, blah. But once you do that, you can protect your identity with a PIN. You can access transcripts, and they're trying to make that much more easier to work with the IRS to get information on your own. And I applaud those efforts. So again, it's not all negative coming from the IRS, what they've done over the last 4 to 5 years. But as far as customer service and really hurting taxpayers with changing the rules and regulations, this is what I'm talking about. Really has hurt taxpayers and the poorest the most, those that are struggling to get by. So the second thing that I want to talk about is offer and compromise. And there's two issues here. It used to be, back in the golden days, well, before the Biden administration, we could prepare an offer and submit it. And if done correctly, they would review it. And believe it or not, the first response we might get would be an accepted offer. Happened all the time. We would prepare it, we would submit it, make sure everything was put together. And if there weren't any questions or issues that popped up, we could get an offer accepted letter as our first response from the offer and compromise unit. Happened all the time. It never happens today. Never. The first letter, and this is what people doing offers on their own, and again, this really hurts people that aren't represented and don't know the process and don't know the games the IRS is playing. And I say games because it's absolutely ridiculous to reject every single offer. It's dishonest and unethical, in my opinion. They're not even considering these cases. Every single case gets a rejection offer. your offer is rejected unless, and then the fine print says, unless you call us within 10 days. So good luck calling them and getting a hold of them if you don't know how to do it. And you have to hound them to finally get a hold of somebody and say, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm engaged. What are the issues? And sometimes they're asking for estimated tax payments for people living on Social Security. Sometimes they're saying you need to file tax returns that they didn't need to file. There is every single case is getting rejected. And again, to me, as our government doing that to people is dishonest. It's unethical. And they've made it so much harder for, people ask me all the time, should I file an offer on my own? And there are times I tell people, hey, you can set up an installment agreement. You can do this, especially if you've talked with them before. And again, you can do simple things with the IRS. But some of the things like doing an offer and compromise, they've made it harder than ever to do an offer on your own. The main reason why, if you don't know, your case is going to get rejected time and time again. And if you file too many offer and compromises, they can just reject them. And this is not something new as being it's not a frequent flyer. I'm trying to think of the word, but it shows that you're not serious about your offer and compromises. I just spoke to someone who had filed 8 to 9 offers, all rejected. He has no idea why they're being rejected. We'll take a hard look at it and see exactly why it's being rejected and how we can help him actually have a legitimate chance at a successful offer and compromise. So that's, with offer and compromise, it's a big problem. Second big problem with offer and compromises is equity. This is a huge change that the Biden administration, they rule of thumb is that if someone had equity in property and they could prove that they couldn't access it, so they go and try to get a loan denial letter or show that they couldn't sell the property, they couldn't get financing on it, maybe get a couple loan denial letters showing good faith and effort. And this really affects people that are fixed incomes, but they at least purchased a home. And they've been living in their home where they have some equity in it. Now, when you look at equity in homes, when you're looking at an offer and compromise, first of all, there's an 80% rule across the board. Doesn't matter what service or negotiation you're doing. So if someone owns a $400,000 home, 400,000 times 20% or times 80% is 320,000. So the IRS will treat it as if it had 320,000. But people that have lived in their homes 10, 20 years, especially prior to the values, fair market values jump like crazy, all of a sudden they have equity in their home, but they can't afford to move anywhere. If you sell your home, then you have to purchase something, and everything is a lot more expensive, unless you move to Mexico. It really is a dilemma that has really affected a lot of elderly people, a lot of people that are disabled, people that don't have the incomes that they had before, but yet they have some equity in property. The IRS used to allow for, people, if you could prove you couldn't access the equity, they would do that. They would eliminate that equity from consideration in the offer and compromise, and people would qualify it all the time. Again, this wasn't bipartisan. It wasn't a partisan thing before. I mean, this is similar under the Bush, Obama, Trump administration, but it's a major change that the Biden administration made that takes a lot of people that are getting by, but they happen to have some equity in their home that they've lived in for a long time. It really affects retirees and people living on Social Security on fixed incomes. They're never going to be paid that. The alternative is, well, that's something else. The alternative is to go into a hardship status. And the problem with the hardship status is that the Biden administration, it used to be that if you were on a fixed income, you were sailing off, as long as your tax returns didn't show an increase in income, people would stay in a non-collectible status moving forward for, until something triggered. If they owed again, or if their income went up, something happened that pulled them out of that non-collectible status and warned the IRS, hey, the situation has changed. They might be able to pay now. Now, the way that it happens is that every single case is reviewed after 2 years. And you say the IRS is overwhelmed. Why would they do this? It's to try to get more money, and it makes the process harder for the people that are in hardship statuses. We can prove they can't afford to pay the balances, and legally they qualify for it. But now they have to renegotiate every 2 years with the IRS. That is another massive change that has hurt the poorest the most. I mean, people that can barely afford representation, now they've got to afford a representation every couple of years. It makes it a lot harder to deal with. And we've had to change our fee. We've had to extend our services where we take care of clients for at least 4 years. We'll do another negotiation after 2 years. But again, it's just makes the process more difficult. It makes it harder for people to do. And especially for people on a fixed income, they're going off into retirement. Nothing's going to change except for maybe they die and pass away. And then the IRS is going to get the money anyway. But again, it's a huge change that they've made that really does hurt people across the board. So the 2-year expiration on hardship or non-collectible statuses really is that's another thing I would love to see change, go back to the way it was under previous administrations, Democrat and Republican, and a big way that the Biden administration has hurt the poorest taxpayers out there, people least of it able to afford to pay. Excuse me. I mentioned earlier IRS.gov and how the IRS is making it easier to access your transcripts online. I think that's a good, positive thing. On the flip side, the IRS has made it harder than ever to access your transcripts any other way. So again, it's just they want to encourage everybody to shove them to irs.gov where they don't need to have someone answer the phones. And again, you can talk to a chat bot, AI or whatever. But again, you can't call in. And if you don't have a computer, you don't understand computers, especially for older people. Again, this is anathema. They don't know how to handle this. So when you call into the IRS now and you request transcripts, a lot of times they will mail them to the person's home last known address. So it has to be their official address on file with the IRS, and they'll mail them out. If that goes through, I used to be able to get transcripts like that on a phone call, have them put into a secure mailbox, and then we would pull them, and they won't do that anymore. They made it so hard for people to just call in and get information about their case and address things in the short term. So if they're trying to file missing returns, etc., it takes much longer to get that taken care of. The customer service really has decreased. And that takes us to our next topic, is getting rid of the extra layers of bureaucracy at the IRS. Used to be you would have maybe 3 layers of bureaucracy at the IRS. You would have your main call centers. Then you would have a streamlined line of people that could help with simple cases, setting up installment agreements, etc. But a lot of times you would be talking to the streamline unit first. And then you would have what's called collections. So 2, maybe 3 layers, depending on which phone for you call it. Under the Biden administration, they have added a completely new layer called special compliance. They have separated out most of the business and personal cases. So if you have a business and personal debt, it's a lot more common now that you have to talk to 2 different lines. And I mentioned with the transcripts, if you're talking to collections, they can't give you transcripts anymore. But the streamline unit can, but the streamline unit can't resolve your case for you. They have to send you over to collections. And so they made, and I've asked IRS agents, why do they do this? And most of them say, I have no idea. It was so much easier beforehand. So they have bureaucrats making ridiculous decisions, making it harder for taxpayers just to get information, just to even talk to them. And they made it harder for professionals as well. Every now and then we get someone that's a little more old school, and we can get so much more done because we don't have the ridiculous bouncing back and forth. And again, those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things I would love to see changed and changed quickly at the IRS. So get rid of the extra layers of bureaucracy. Special Compliance Division is a new division. If you haven't dealt with them, be thankful. They need to get rid of them entirely. It's a waste, absolute waste. And again, they made it harder for experienced people to do what they're doing. And they also need to revamp their training program. You have so many new people there at the IRS that don't know what they're talking about. They're shoved into the phone lines, and they're being trained to be very combative, very aggressive with taxpayers. And again, there are plenty of very nice, sweet people at the IRS. Don't get me wrong there. But overall, the new revenue officers, how they're training their new employees is ridiculous. They're treating taxpayers as criminals, especially those that are calling in and trying to resolve issues. They're trying to work with them. And if you don't say and do the right thing, I mean, this has always been a problem at the IRS where you have some people that will give bad information out, threaten people. But again, the level of aggressiveness at the IRS is unheard of, even dealing with representatives. So there were times I would call into the IRS and I would disclose right away that I was an attorney. And they would demand things. They would say, well, you have to do this. I'm like, well, really? What about if I qualify for this program? And I'm like, oh, well, you have to prove it up. And I'm like, well, I have all the numbers to go over right now. And then they would realize, oh, he knows what he's talking about. And their entire demeanor would change. How unfair is that to regular taxpayers? That when someone knows their rights and responsibilities, they act completely differently than when they're just talking to a member of the public. I mean, it helps me as a tax preparer, but I think, again, that's unethical. It's unfair. They're supposed to be helping taxpayers, but they act like a giant collection agency, which is what they are. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of amazing people at the IRS that really do have the taxpayers' best interests at heart. But most of the new people we're seeing, it's the way they're training them to be very aggressive, to treat taxpayers like criminals. I hope a lot of that gets changed and changed quickly with the new year, with the new administration. And again, that's my top list of things I would like to see revert back to the way they were before the Biden administration, to help especially the poorest out there, the people that do qualify for programs. And again, it would help get more money in the IRS pockets, help resolve their backlog, clean things out so that they can focus on the real abusers and people that are purposely not paying and hiding assets, etc. But again, unfortunately, and this has been admitted by the IRS, it's easier to go after the poorest people. They don't know their rights. They don't know how to defend themselves. So if you have those questions, you feel like your rights are being abused, call us. We give free advice all the time. 520-485-7371. Look us up online. All these shows are posted to our YouTube channel at guardiantaxlaw.com. So again, have a great day, and I hope a lot of these changes happen and this was helpful to you.